Hey, so tonight we're going to talk about something incredibly sobering, a stark reality often brushed aside by the grandeur of historical narratives, the forgotten soldiers buried beneath no man's land. You might have seen movies or played games that show quick dashes across scarred earth, a heroic charge, but rarely do they delve into the grim truth of what lay there permanently. Tonight we're stripping away the romantic myths and looking at the raw, brutal fact of it. Before we dive into this chilling landscape, take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Alright, find that cozy spot, pull your blanket a little tighter, and let's journey back to a place of mud, terror, and the eternal slumber of countless young men. You're standing on a railway platform, the steam from the locomotive curling around your ankles like ghostly tendrils. The year is 1915, maybe 1916, you've just said your goodbyes. Quick. Strained embraces with a mother whose eyes are brimming, a father trying to look stern, but failing. A sweetheart whose hand you've clung to for the last time. The air is thick with the smell of coal smoke and fear. A metallic tang of impending doom that nobody dares to name. Your uniform, stiff and new, feels alien on your skin, the rough surge scratching against your neck. You're just a boy, really, barely out of adolescence, though the propaganda posters plastered everywhere promised you'd return a man, a hero. The train carriage is packed, a sardine can of nervous energy. Young faces, some laughing too loudly, others staring blankly out the window as the familiar landscape of home begins to blur. You can still hear the faint, distant echo of your mother's voice, a final warning to stay safe, to be careful. But even as you try to hold on to it, the sound is already fading, replaced by the relentless clatter of the wheels on the tracks, a rhythmic, hypnotic march towards the unknown. You watch the fields, green and vibrant, slowly give way to industrial towns, their chimneys spewing black smoke into a sky that seems to grow heavier with each passing mile. The conversations around you are a jumble of dialects, brave boasts about what you'll do to the enemy, and hushed anxieties about what the enemy might do to you. Someone tries to sing a popular song, but their voice cracks and the melody dies out, leaving an uncomfortable silence. You clutch the small, worn photograph in your tunic pocket, a smiling face, a reminder of everything you're leaving behind, everything you're fighting for. But the image feels distant already, almost unreal, a dream from another life. The men around you are your comrades now, strangers united by a common, terrifying destination. You share a flask of cheap brandy, its fiery burn doing little to quell the cold dread seeping into your bones. The laughter becomes forced, the jokes hollow. You can feel the weight of your rifle, the cold steel of the bayonet, a stark, brutal contrast to the soft touch of your sweetheart's hand. The train plunges into darkness, entering a long tunnel, and for a moment you're enveloped in a blackness so profound it feels like the future itself. When it emerges, blinking into the grey light of dawn, the world outside seems different, harsher, stripped of its comforting colours. The air smells different now, too, not just coal, but something metallic, something like damp earth and distant, acrid smoke. Deep in your gut that you're no longer just travelling, you're transitioning. You're crossing a threshold from a world of soft beds and warm meals to a realm where such luxuries are as distant as the stars. Your heart thumps a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat for the war that awaits you. You press your face against the cold glass of the window, searching for a sign, any sign, that this is all a mistake, a terrible dream. But there is none. Only the endless rolling landscape, increasingly scarred and unfamiliar, drawing you closer and closer to the precipice. The conversation has dwindled to whispers, prayers, and the occasional nervous cough. You close your eyes, trying to conjure the image of home one last time, to imprint it deeply because a part of you already suspects you might never see it again. The world outside, through the grimy window, is a blur of passing trees and telegraph poles, each one a silent sentinel, marking your relentless progress towards the front. The faint scent of distant explosions begins to permeate the carriage, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor that rattles the glass and shakes the very foundation of your fragile courage. You glance at the other faces around you, seeing mirrored reflections of your own fear, your own uncertainty, your own desperate hope that somehow you will be different, you will survive. The train grinds to a halt, not at a bustling station, but in the middle of nowhere, or what feels like it. You disembark into a landscape utterly unlike anything you've ever witnessed. It's a desolation, a vast open wound across the earth. The sky above is a perpetual bruised grey, and the ground beneath your feet is a sticky, tenacious mud that clings to your boots with a malevolent grip. This isn't the romanticized battlefield you've read about. It's a quagmire, a realm of perpetual decay. The first thing that hits you isn't the sight, but the smell. It's an olfactory assault, a stench that clutches at your throat and tries to pull you under. You've never smelled anything like it. It's a grotesque cocktail of damp earth, stagnant water, rotting flesh, human and animal, unwashed bodies, mildew, chloride of lime, cordite, and the sweet, sickly aroma of gangrene. It's a smell that will forever be etched into your memory, permeating your clothes, your hair, your very skin, and years later, even in the comfort of your own home, a damp patch or a whiff of decay will transport you back to this moment, to this precise stomach-turning odor. You stumble forward, the heavy pack on your back digging into your shoulders, your rifle feeling like a dead weight. The road, if you can call it that, is churned up by the ceaseless passage of lorries and artillery, a rutted, treacherous path that seems to swallow men whole. You pass supply convoys, mud-splattered and weary, their horses straining, their drivers' faces grim. You see columns of walking wounded, some bandaged crudely, others limping with shattered limbs, their vacant eyes staring through you as if you're already a ghost. Their silence is more terrifying than any scream. Their very presence is a chilling prophecy of your own likely fate. You try not to look, but you can't help it. Each broken man is a mirror, reflecting a potential future you desperately try to deny. Ahead of you, through the mist and drizzle, the ground begins to ripple, to buckle. It's not a natural undulation. These are the trenches, the vast, intricate network of scars that crisscross the land. They look like open sores, brown and raw against the grey backdrop. The air is punctuated by the distant, rhythmic thud of artillery fire, a dull, resonant boom that seems to shake the very ground beneath your feet. It's a sound that quickly becomes as ubiquitous as your own heartbeat, a constant reminder of the unseen, deadly forces at play. You descend into the trench, the muddy steps slick and treacherous. The air immediately grows colder, heavier. The walls are a chaotic mess of earth, sandbags and splintered wood, held together by sheer desperation. Your boots sink into the thick, cloying mud at the bottom. A mud that's more than just earth and water. It's mixed with everything: human waste, blood, discarded rations, fragments of shell, and though you try not to think about it, the indistinguishable remnants of those who came before you. It squelches and sucks at your feet with every step, a constant, irritating drag. The trench twists and turns, a labyrinth designed for survival and death. You shuffle past men huddled in dugouts, their faces caked with mud, their eyes hollow with exhaustion and fear. They glance at you, the new arrival, with a mixture of pity and resentment. Your fresh meat, a reminder of their own lost innocence. You can almost feel their unspoken thoughts. Another one? He won't last. Their stares are a palpable weight, a silent judgment that chills you more than the biting wind. The constant drip of water from the corrugated iron sheeting overhead is a relentless, maddening sound, adding to the pervasive dampness that penetrates your uniform and seeps into your bones. The dugout, your new home, is a cramped, claustrophobic hole in the earth, barely wide enough for two men to lie side by side. The floor is straw, infested with lice and reeking of stale sweat and smoke. There's a tiny oil lamp, its flickering flame casting dancing shadows that seem to twist the faces of your new comrades into grotesque masks. The air is thick with cigarette smoke, a desperate attempt to mask the pervasive stench. You try to speak, but your voice catches in your throat. This is real. This is war. And it's nothing like the glorious adventure you were promised. The mud, the cold, the smell, the constant threat. It's a living nightmare, and you've just stepped through the gateway. You sit down on a wooden plank, the chill immediately seeping into your tired body. A veteran soldier, his face a roadmap of fatigue and experience, hands you a steaming mug of something dark and bitter, tea, but it tastes of mud and despair. You sip it, the warmth a small, fleeting comfort in this world of overwhelming desolation. The sound of distant machine gun fire chatters in the night, a mechanical beast awakening, reminding you that even in this supposed sanctuary, death is never far. You pull your greatcoat tighter, wishing for a moment of quiet, a moment of warmth, a moment of oblivion. But there is only the mud, the cold, the smells, and the inescapable truth that you are now part of this vast, brutal machine. The shadows around you seem to lengthen, to twist into monstrous forms, and for the first time, a primal terror seizes you, a gut-wrenching realization that you might never leave this place. You try to write a letter home, but your fingers are numb and the words won't come. How could you ever explain this to them? How could you describe the soul-crushing weight of this existence? The pen feels heavy, alien in your hand, a relic from a life already receding into memory. You stare at the blank page, a symbol of the vast, unbridgeable chasm that now separates you from the world you once knew. You wake to the perpetual dampness, a cold embrace that never truly leaves you. Your bones ache, your muscles stiff from sleeping in a cramped, unnatural position. The ground beneath your thin blanket is unyielding, saturated with moisture. But it's not just the cold, it's the mud. Oh, the mud. It's not just on the floor, the trench. It's everywhere. It coats your boots, cakes your puttees, smears your uniform, and finds its way into every crevice of your body. It's a thick, viscous, omnipresent force, a living entity that seems to possess a malevolent will. You try to walk, but each step is a struggle, your boots sinking into the greasy, sucking mass that's often knee-deep, sometimes deeper. Men have drowned in this mud, swallowed whole by its treacherous embrace, their cries for help muffled by its insatiable hunger. You learn quickly to step carefully, to test the ground before committing your full weight, for a wrong move can mean getting stuck, a target for a stray bullet, or worse, succumbing to exhaustion as you fight to free yourself. The mud smells of decay, a composite of countless things that have met their end within its grasp. Splintered wood, discarded rations, unidentifiable organic matter, and the ever-present stench of human waste. Latrines are often just deeper pits in the trench, adding to the already overwhelming assault on your senses. You learn to breathe through your mouth to try and ignore the constant putrid aroma, but it's a losing battle. The mud is your constant companion, your enemy, and your grave, but the mud isn't alone. You quickly discover the other denizens of this subterranean world, the rats. They are everywhere, sleek, fearless, and horrifyingly large. They swarm through the trenches, bold as brass, feasting on discarded food, on the unburied dead in no man's land, and sometimes, if a man is too weak or too still, even on the living. You hear them at night, scuttling over your face as you try to sleep, their tiny claws like icy needles, their whiskers brushing your skin. You learn to sleep with one eye open, or with your hands clutched around your rifle, ready to strike out. They are a constant, gnawing presence, a physical manifestation of the filth and degradation that surrounds you. You see men go mad trying to kill them, spending precious energy on futile rat hunts, their faces twisted in a frenzy of disgust and desperation. A single rat can destroy a night's sleep, gnawing at your sanity as much as at your ration. And then there are the lice. They are a plague, a torment that knows no respite. They infest your clothes, your hair, your skin, laying their eggs in the seams of your uniform, clinging to your body with tenacious ferocity. You scratch until your skin is raw, until it bleeds, but the itching never stops. You see men in the brief lulls, sitting in the meager sunlight if there is any, picking through their shirts, cracking the tiny white bodies between their thumbnails with a grim satisfaction. This ritual of chatting is a common sight, a shared misery. The constant irritation, the sleepless nights, the feeling of being crawled upon by 1,000 invisible enemies, it wears you down, grinding away at your morale, making you feel less human, more like an animal. You often wonder if the enemy across no man's land is suffering the same torment, sharing this same hellish existence. It's a strange, unspoken bond, a perverse camaraderie forged in filth and discomfort. The lack of personal hygiene is a silent killer. Water is precious, reserved for drinking and cooking. Washing is a rare luxury, often done with a meager scoop of cold, muddy water. Your skin becomes chapped, raw, covered in sores that refuse to heal in the perpetual dampness. Trench foot, a terrifying condition caused by prolonged exposure to wet and cold, is a constant threat. You see men with feet so swollen and discolored they look like something from a nightmare. Their toes rotting, their skin peeling. The pain is excruciating, often leading to gangrene and amputation. You're constantly checking your own feet, rubbing them vigorously, trying to keep the circulation going, knowing that a single lapse could mean losing a limb or even your life. The smell of unwashed bodies, mixed with the stench of decay, permeates everything. You learn to live with it, to exist within this bubble of filth, but it slowly erodes your sense of self, your connection to the clean, civilized world you left behind. You look at your reflection in a shard of glass, if you can find one, and barely recognize the gaunt, mud-caked face staring back. Your eyes are shadowed, haunted, reflecting a world of unimaginable suffering. The mud and the vermin become metaphors for the war itself, inescapable, relentless, degrading, and ultimately soul-destroying. You pull your knees up to your chest, trying to conserve some body heat, but the cold seeps through your threadbare uniform, settling deep into your bones. The incessant scratching of lice, the rustle of rats in the darkness, and the sucking sound of the mud outside the dugout door are the lullabies of this forsaken place. You yearn for the simple luxury of a hot bath, a clean sheet, a moment of true solitude, away from the teeming, crawling life of the trench. But those memories are fading, becoming distant dreams. This is your reality now, and it's one defined by an unending battle against the elements, against disease, and against the insidious creatures that share your desperate existence. You close your eyes, but the images of rats scurrying across a fallen comrade, the feel of lice crawling on your scalp, and the omnipresent, suffocating smell of the mud are burned into your consciousness, a cruel reminder of the hell you inhabit. You quickly learn the language of the artillery. Each incoming shell has its own distinct whistle, a terrifying crescendo that tells you how close it is, how personal its message of destruction might be. There's the distant, high-pitched whine of a whiz-bang, a lighter, faster shell, designed for quick impact. Then there's the deeper, more ominous shriek of a heavier artillery piece, a coal box or a Jack Johnson, its roar tearing through the air, vibrating in your very chest before it lands with a concussive blast that shakes the earth and sends a geyser of mud and shrapnel skyward. You learn to distinguish between the outgoing rounds, a satisfying thud that signifies your own side's offensive, and the terrifying incoming whistle that means death could be seconds away. The The sound of an exploding shell is not just a bang. It's a multi-layered assault. First, the deafening roar, a physical blow that rattles your eardrums and sends shock waves through your entire body. Then, the spray of shrapnel, a metallic hail that clatters against the sandbags, rips through the trench walls, and tears into flesh. The air is immediately thick with the acrid smell of cordite, a chemical tang that stings your nostrils and burns your throat. The ground beneath you heaves, momentarily losing its solidity, as if the earth itself is screaming in agony. You learn to instinctually duck, to press yourself against the muddy trench wall, to make yourself as small a target as possible, your hands clasped over your helmet, praying for it to be over. You feel the tremor through the ground, a deep, primal vibration that travels up your legs and into your stomach, a constant reminder of the unseen, unfelt force that could end your life in an instant. The shelling is relentless, sometimes lasting for hours, sometimes for days without end, in what becomes known as bombardment. It's a psychological torture as much as a physical threat. The constant noise grinds away at your nerves, shattering any hope of peace or quiet. Sleep becomes impossible, replaced by a state of constant, twitchy alert. Your ears ring, your head throbs, and the world outside the trench becomes a blur of explosions and dust. You see men break under the strain, their eyes wide and unseeing, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. They are shell-shocked, their minds unable to cope with the incessant barrage of violence and noise. Their vacant stares, their uncontrollable tremors, are a stark warning of what this war can do, not just to the body, but to the very fabric of the soul. You try to talk, but your voice is lost in the din. You try to think, but your thoughts are scattered, fragmented by the concussions. You exist in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the next whistle, the next crash, the next moment of terror. The fear is a cold, hard knot in your stomach, a constant companion that tightens with every passing second. You feel completely helpless, utterly at the mercy of forces beyond your control, mere pawns in a colossal game of destruction. The dirt and debris raining down on you is a constant reminder of the fragile line between life and death. You feel the grit in your teeth, the dust in your eyes, and the lingering taste of metallic earth on your tongue. Beyond the deafening chaos of the artillery, there is another, more insidious threat, the sniper. He is the invisible hunter, the silent killer. You learn to be wary of every exposed head, every moment you lift yourself above the parapet. A single sharp crack and a man near you can drop. A neat hole in his helmet or forehead, a sudden, shocking end to a life that moments before was vibrant and real. You hear the bullet first, a sharp, almost polite smack, followed by the report of the rifle echoing across no man's land. It's a chilling reminder that even in the quiet moments between bombardments, death is still watching, still waiting. You learn to move quickly, to keep low, to avoid any unnecessary exposure. The periscope becomes your best friend, allowing you to observe the enemy lines without risking your own head. But even with precautions, the sniper's aim is often true. You see men fall while retrieving rations, while trying to fix a wire, even while performing the most mundane tasks. Their sudden, silent collapse is a stark contrast to the explosive chaos of a shell, but no less final. The sniper instills a constant paranoia, an awareness that you are always being watched, always a potential target. Every sound becomes amplified, the rustle of leaves, the distant bird call, the creak of the trench boards. Is it a sniper? Is he moving into position? Is he lining you up right now? This constant vigilance is exhausting, draining your mental reserves, turning you into a nervous wreck. At night, the flares illuminate no man's land, turning the desolate landscape into an eerie, alien world of harsh shadows and blinding light. You watch them arc gracefully into the sky, then hang suspended for what feels like an eternity, bathing the scene in a ghostly, white glow. For those brief moments, the world is exposed, vulnerable. Any movement out there is instantly visible, drawing a hail of machine gun fire or the crack of a sniper's rifle. You learn to hate the flares, for they strip away the comforting darkness, exposing both you and the enemy to the cold light of war. You spend countless hours staring into that abyss, straining your eyes, your ears, trying to discern movement, a shadow, a sign of the enemy. The constant exposure to this brutal soundscape and the ever-present threat of instant death wears down your resolve, stripping away layers of your humanity. You become a creature of instinct, your senses heightened, your reactions honed by the constant dance with mortality. The symphony of destruction plays on, a never-ending chorus of fear, a soundtrack to your days and nights in this forsaken land. You can feel the vibrations of distant shells, even when they are far away, a low rumble that is more felt than heard, a constant unsettling thrum beneath your very feet. It's an almost physical pressure, a subtle yet pervasive force that keeps your nerves on edge. Even the earth itself seems to be alive with the war, its tremors echoing the violent upheavals above ground. You clench your fists, your knuckles white, trying to find some anchor, some stability in this constantly shifting, exploding reality. The smell of burning chemicals, a mixture of cordite and unknown substances, clings to the air, making each breath a gritty, metallic experience. You close your eyes, but the flashes of light from distant explosions still pierce the darkness behind your eyelids. A constant, violent light show. You stand at the fire step, peering through a loophole in the sandbags, and for the first time, you truly confront no man's land. It's not just a term. It's a living, breathing horror, a vast, open grave stretching out before you. Imagine, if you can, a landscape utterly devoid of life, scarred beyond recognition. Where once there were fields, perhaps even quaint villages, there is now only a churned-up, desolate wasteland. The ground is a sickly, grey-brown, cratered by countless shell explosions, each one a pockmark of death. These craters are often filled with stagnant, putrid water, reflecting the perpetually bruised sky like dead eyes. The mud here is even worse than in the trenches, deeper, more treacherous, a viscous soup that seems to writhe with unspoken horrors. It's a no-go zone, a deadly expanse of silence and terror. What strikes you most is the sheer emptiness. No trees stand upright. Those that haven't been splintered into grotesque matchsticks are skeletal, blackened forms, their branches reaching like desperate, withered hands towards a god that seems to have abandoned this place. Barbed wire, miles upon miles of it, stretches across the landscape, an intricate, rusted web designed to snare and hold. It's not just neat fences. It's a tangled, cruel mess, coils upon coils of sharp, unforgiving metal, often half submerged in the mud, waiting to tear flesh. It catches on everything: discarded uniforms, fragments of equipment, and tragically, the bones and rags of those who tried to cross it. The air, even when there's no immediate shelling, is heavy with the weight of death. A macabre stillness hangs over the area, broken only by the distant sounds of the war, or the lonely cry of a curlew, a sound that seems impossibly pure in such a defiled place. You strain your eyes, trying to see beyond the immediate churned earth, beyond the endless barbed wire, to the enemy trenches that lie somewhere in the distance. They are an unseen threat, a mirror image of your own hell, just waiting. The landscape is littered with the detritus of war, a horrifying exhibition of its brutality. Broken rifles, rusting helmets, splintered duckboards, fragments of uniforms, all tell a silent story of lives lost, of battles fought and ended here. But the most chilling sights are the bodies, hundreds, thousands of them. They lie where they fell, often half buried in the mud or caught on the barbed wire like grotesque scarecrows. Some are recognizable, others are mere bundles of rags and bones, their forms distorted by time, weather, and the ravenous rats. You see them, or parts of them, everywhere. A boot sticking out of a crater, a hand reaching from the mud, a skull bleached white by the sun. They are the forgotten, the unmourned, their resting place a testament to the sheer scale of the slaughter. You try to look away, but your eyes are drawn back, compelled by a morbid fascination, a primal fear, and perhaps a perverse recognition that this could be your own fate. Their faces, if they still have them, are often turned towards the sky, mouths open in a silent scream, eyes wide in perpetual horror. The sheer anonymity of their deaths is what truly haunts you. They are no longer individuals, but statistics, grim reminders of the meat grinder that is the front line. Sometimes in the dead of night, you think you hear them. Not the living, but the dead. The wind whistling through the barbed wire sounds like a mournful lament, a chorus of ghostly sighs. Or perhaps it's just the strain of your own mind, playing tricks on you in this desolate abyss. But you can't shake the feeling that they are there, all around you, silent witnesses to your own struggle, waiting for you to join them. The moon, when it appears, casts long, distorted shadows, turning the corpses into grotesque monuments, their forms elongated and twisted by the eerie light. Every patch of shadow seems to hide a new horror, a new reminder of the cost of this war. The air is surprisingly still out there, a vacuum of sound between the distant thud of the artillery. It's a silence that is almost more terrifying than the noise, for it allows your imagination to run wild, to conjure up images of unseen dangers, of lurking enemies, of the ghosts of the fallen. You clench your jaw, your hands tightening on the cold steel of your rifle, a fragile defense against the overwhelming despair that emanates from this desolate expanse. You can feel the weight of their gaze, the unspoken plea of the forgotten, even though their eyes are long since gone. This is no man's land, and it is a place where life comes to die and death lingers forever. The taste of dust and decay is always present in your mouth, an invisible particulate that seems to cling to everything, including your very breath. You imagine yourself out there, tangled in the wire, exposed to the elements, to the rats, to the indifference of the world. A shudder runs through you, a visceral rejection of that inevitable future, a desperate plea for survival in a place where survival seems an impossible dream. The order comes down. A patrol tonight, into no man's land. Your gut clenches, a cold knot of dread tightening in your stomach. This is it. This is the moment you've both feared and anticipated since arriving. You swallow hard, trying to appear outwardly calm, but your hands are trembling as you check your rifle, fix your bayonet. The objective is vague: reconnaissance, wire cutting, perhaps even to bring back a prisoner for interrogation. But the real objective, you know, is simply to survive. As dusk settles, painting the sky in bruised purples and greys, the world outside the trench transforms into an even more menacing place. The shadows lengthen, distorting familiar shapes into grotesque forms. The silence, punctuated only by the distant rumble of artillery, becomes oppressive, heavy with unspoken threats. You pull your helmet down low, check your equipment one last time, and exchange nervous glances with your comrades. There's an unspoken understanding, a shared terror that binds you together in this moment. You are a small, fragile team about to step into the mouth of hell. The officer gives final instructions, his voice a low, urgent whisper that somehow carries the weight of command and desperation. You climb out of the trench, a slow, agonizing process, trying not to dislodge any loose earth that might betray your presence. The parapet is a thin, precarious line between relative safety and absolute exposure. The first breath of air outside the trench is shockingly cold, cleaner than the fetid air below, but it carries the metallic tang of fear and the pervasive smell of decay. Your boots sink immediately into the thick, sucking mud. You move slowly, excruciatingly slowly, on your belly, crawling through the craters and over the tangled barbed wire. Every movement is a risk. Every rustle of your uniform, every misplaced footfall could be heard by an enemy sentry, leading to a hail of bullets or a burst of machine gun fire. You hug the ground, feeling the cold, damp earth against your face, the coarse grit in your mouth. Your heart pounds against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat that you're convinced the entire enemy line can hear. Your breath comes in short, ragged gasps. The silence is broken only by the slither of your body through the mud, the rasp of your equipment, and the incessant chattering of your own teeth. The barbed wire is a nightmare. It's an intricate, malevolent labyrinth, often hidden by the mud and darkness. You see ghostly forms caught in its grasp, fragments of uniforms, discarded gear, and sometimes, horrifyingly, the skeletal remains of men who got entangled and died there. You have to navigate around it, or cut it with wire cutters, the metallic snap sounding deafeningly loud in the oppressive silence. A single snag can lead to a shout, a fall, a burst of gunfire. You feel the sharp barbs tearing at your uniform, sometimes even drawing blood through the thick fabric. You try not to think about the possibility of being caught, of being trapped, exposed, waiting for death as the enemy riddles you with bullets. Your hands are raw, scraped from pulling yourself over obstacles, from feeling for wire in the dark. Your muscles ache, every fiber of your being screaming for rest, but there is no rest here. You move from shell crater to shell crater, each one offering a momentary, precarious refuge from the unseen eyes and potential bullets. You lie still for long stretches, listening, straining your ears for any sound, a whisper, a cough, the distant click of a rifle bolt. Every shadow seems to hold a threat, every gust of wind a potential enemy. The flares go up periodically, arcing into the night sky, bathing no man's land in an artificial, ghostly light. When they burst, you freeze, pressing yourself flat against the earth, hoping your mud-caked uniform blends into the desolate landscape. For those agonizing seconds, you are utterly exposed, a tiny, vulnerable speck in a vast, illuminated death trap. You can feel the burning sensation of the light on your skin, a spotlight on your terror. You hold your breath, your muscles tensed, waiting for the crack of a rifle, the stutter of a machine gun. When the flare dies, plunging the world back into inky blackness, you blink, disoriented, your eyes struggling to readjust. Your heart hammering against your ribs, you pass the dead, their forms grotesque and familiar, reminders of the ultimate price. A boot here, a helmet there, a half-buried torso, all silent monuments to shattered lives. You try not to look, try not to acknowledge their presence, but their spectral forms are everywhere, a constant, chilling presence. They are the forgotten, and you are treading upon their silent graves. The air is thick with the pervasive stench of decay, a smell that clings to your nostrils, a constant reminder of the mortality that surrounds you. Your mission feels pointless, terrifying. You are moving through a landscape of ghosts, dodging invisible bullets, hoping for nothing more than to return to the relative safety of your own trench. The return journey is often more harrowing. The adrenaline of the outward-bound mission begins to wane, replaced by a creeping exhaustion. Every muscle screams in protest. Every step is a monumental effort. You are utterly spent, mentally and physically, but you must push on. The trench finally appears, a dark, welcoming slit in the earth. You crawl over the parapet, collapsing back into the relative safety, your body shaking, your mind reeling from the experience. You are alive, for now. You can feel the mud caked in your hair, in your ears, sticking to your skin, a grim souvenir of your journey into the moor. You breathe deep, ragged breaths, trying to dislodge the taste of dust and fear from your mouth. The silence of the dugout, after the horrors of no man's land, is a hollow echo. You are back, but a part of you remains out there, forever caught in the barbed wire, forever listening to the screams of the forgotten. You quickly grow accustomed to the sight of death. a brutal desensitization that becomes necessary for survival. But even for the most hardened soldier, the unburied dead of no man's land are a particularly chilling spectacle. They are everywhere, silent witnesses to the futility and savagery of the conflict, caught in various stages of decay, their bodies a stark, unromanticized tableau of war's true cost. From your trench you can see them scattered across the churned earth. Some are relatively intact, perhaps caught in the barbed wire, their uniforms still somewhat distinguishable, their faces, though pale and drawn, still recognizably human. Others are mere fragments, limbs blown off, torsos dismembered, their forms distorted into grotesque, unnatural shapes by the force of explosions. The sheer number is overwhelming, a constant, sickening reminder of the sheer scale of the slaughter. You learn to identify the nationalities by the faint remains of their uniforms, the grey-green of a German, the khaki of a Brit, the blue of a Frenchman. But in death these distinctions blur, becoming irrelevant. They are all simply bodies, all victims, all forgotten. The elements take their toll on these fallen soldiers. Rain washes over them, turning their clothes to sodden rags, speeding the process of decomposition. The sun bakes them, mummifying some, bloats others, drawing flies and insects in buzzing clouds. Frost hardens them in winter, turning them into rigid, almost artistic sculptures of agony before the thaw brings a renewed, sickening softness. The constant shelling churns them up, reburying and unburying them, scattering their remains even further across the desolate landscape. A man who fell in one spot might have his arm discovered 50 yards away months later. You see their boots sticking out of the mud, sometimes even still attached to a leg, a horrifying punctuation mark in the endless quagmire. A helmet might sit innocently on a mound of earth, only for you to realize with a jolt of revulsion that a skull is still inside. Their eyes, if they remain, are often wide open, staring blankly at the indifferent sky, reflecting the grey expanse, devoid of life, devoid of emotion. Their mouths are agape, caught in a final, silent scream that echoes through the desolate landscape, a soundless testament to their final moments of terror and pain. The smell is perpetual, even from a distance. It's the sweet, sickly scent of decay, a powerful, pervasive odor that the wind carries into your trenches, a constant reminder of the rotting charnel house that lies just beyond your parapet. It clings to your clothes, your hair, your very skin, and even when you're far from the front, a sudden whiff of something putrid will transport you back to this specific, nauseating aroma. You try to eat, but the smell, the sight, can often turn your stomach, making even the meager rations unpalatable. The rats, emboldened by the abundance of food, grow fat and fearless, scurrying over the fallen, their presence a grotesque scavenger hunt on the field of the dead. You see them, dark shapes against the fading light, moving purposefully among the corpses, a horrifying ballet of life feeding on death. It's a constant, visceral reminder of the complete lack of dignity afforded to those who die here. They are not heroes in this state. They are simply carrion, fodder for the earth and its scavengers. Sometimes a sudden flare will illuminate the scene, casting the unburied dead in an eerie, ghostly light. Their shadows stretch long and distorted, turning them into monstrous figures, a silent army of the fallen. For a brief moment, their forms are sharply defined, their gruesome details thrown into stark relief before the darkness swallows them once more. These are the moments that truly haunt you, the images that burn themselves into your mind, emerging later in nightmares, in the quiet moments of sleep that offer no true rest. You understand with a chilling clarity that these men were once like you. They had hopes, dreams, families, futures. Now they are just bodies, left to rot in this desolate abyss, their names unremembered, their stories untold. Their very presence out there is a constant psychological burden, a visible representation of what happens when the machines of war consume everything. They are a constant memento mori, a stark warning of your own eventual fate. If you are not careful, if you are not lucky, if the war decides it's your turn. Their silence is deafening, a profound testament to the ultimate horror of this conflict. You clench your jaw, trying to block out the images, the smells, the undeniable truth of their existence. But they are there, always there, an army of the forgotten, forever lying beneath the desolation of no man's land. You try to imagine their last moments, the sounds, the pain, the despair, and a cold shudder runs through you, a premonition of your own possible end. The wind whispers through the tattered remnants of their uniforms, a mournful sigh that seems to carry their unheard pleas. The order comes, retrieve a fallen comrade. Your stomach churns. You know what this means. It means venturing into no man's land, not for offensive action, but for a solemn, dangerous act of remembrance. It's a mission fraught with peril, a desperate attempt to reclaim a shred of humanity in a place where it has long been abandoned. The man who fell, perhaps during a daytime skirmish or a sudden burst of machine gun fire, now lies out there, just beyond the wire. You might have known him, shared a cigarette, a joke, a fear. Now he is just a distant, unmoving shape, a target for snipers and a feast for rats. You gather your gear, your face grim. A stretcher, if you're lucky, or just a ground sheet. You move with a small party, perhaps 4 men, under the cover of darkness, creeping out of the trench, your movements even more cautious than a regular patrol. This isn't about gaining ground. It's about honor, about defying the war's dehumanizing power, about bringing one of your own back home, even if home is just a shallow grave behind the lines. The journey across no man's land is a torturous one. The dead are everywhere, and as you navigate the shell craters and barbed wire, you constantly brush past the remains of others. You try not to think about it, try to focus solely on the task at hand. The cold, damp earth presses against your face. The pervasive smell of decay is overwhelming. Every step is a calculated risk. The enemy might hear you, might see you. A flare could go up, illuminating your desperate act of mercy, turning you into easy targets. You move in silence, a macabre ballet of shadows, your hearts pounding in your chests, the adrenaline making your senses hyper-alert. The faint outline of your comrade's body eventually comes into view, lying awkwardly, perhaps entangled in the wire. As you approach, the true horror reveals itself. The body is often already ravaged. Rats might have been at it, or the elements have taken their toll. His face, if visible, might be distorted by death, by the impact of a shell fragment, or by the slow, grotesque process of decomposition. You might recognize a feature, a button, a patch, a personal belonging, and a wave of grief and revulsion washes over you. This was a man, a friend. Now he is this. The retrieval itself is a grim, heavy task. The body is often stiff, unwieldy, or conversely disturbingly soft and pliable. If he's caught in the wire, freeing him can be a painstaking, dangerous process. Each tug on the sharp barbs a reminder of the cruel trap that claimed him. The smell is intense, sickeningly sweet, clinging to your uniform, invading your nostrils. You try to be gentle, to show respect, but the urgency of the situation, the ever-present threat of enemy fire, forces you to be rougher than you wish. You wrestle with the weight, the stiffness, the entanglement. His limbs may be broken, his clothes torn, his body shattered. You might find his pocket watch, a letter from home, a small token of a life he once lived, a life now irrevocably lost. You try to hold on to these remnants of his humanity, to treat them with reverence, but the brutal reality of the moment pushes them to the periphery of your awareness. Carrying him back is an agonizing journey. The stretcher bearers stumble in the mud, the body swaying precariously. The weight is immense, not just physically but emotionally. You are carrying not just a corpse, but the shattered dreams, the unspoken words, the future that was stolen from this man. Each step is a struggle, a fight against the terrain, against exhaustion, against the gnawing fear that you might share his fate at any moment. You are slow, vulnerable, a clear target. You listen intently for any sound from the enemy lines, any hint of discovery. The relief when you finally reach the relative safety of your own trench is immense, a visceral outpouring of adrenaline and exhaustion. You deposit the body, often in a temporary dugout or a designated burial spot behind the lines. You are covered in mud, in the smell of decay, in the grim reality of what you have done. You wash your hands, but the stench seems to linger, clinging to your skin, to your clothes, to your very soul. You look at the mud on your uniform, imagining the blood, the soil, the essence of the fallen comrade that has now transferred to you. But often, retrieval is impossible. The shelling is too heavy, the enemy fire too intense, or the body is simply too far out, too close to the enemy lines, too entangled in the wire, or too dismembered to gather. You are forced to leave him there, to abandon him to the elements, to the rats, to the slow, inevitable process of becoming one with the mud of no man's land. This is the true futility, the heartbreak. To know that a comrade, a friend, lies out there, exposed, unmourned, and to be powerless to do anything about it. This helplessness is a cruel torment, a constant wound in your conscience. You stand on the fire step, looking out at the distant, unmoving shape that was once a man, a life, and you feel the immense crushing weight of the war, the complete and utter disregard it has for human life, for human dignity. You remember his laugh, his face, the stories he told, and you know that all of that is now just a memory, slowly fading into the desolate abyss. The wind howls through the barbed wire, carrying with it a mournful lament for all the forgotten soldiers, the ones who could not be brought home, the ones whose final resting place remains the desolate, unyielding embrace of no man's land. You try to swallow, but your throat feels tight, choked with unspoken grief. The image of his vacant eyes staring sightlessly at the indifferent sky is burned into your memory, a permanent scar on your soul. The order rings out, sharp and decisive. Over the top! It's a command that sends a shiver of ice through your veins, a primal terror that grips your stomach and makes your heart hammer against your ribs like a trapped bird. You've heard the stories, seen the faces of those who've come back from such charges, their eyes empty, their spirits broken. Now it's your turn. The previous hours have been a blur of frantic activity, a heavy artillery bombardment meant to soften up the enemy lines, the air thick with the acrid smell of cordite, the ground shaking beneath your feet. Your officer, his face pale but determined, has gone over the plan countless times, though you know deep down that any plan in this chaos is merely a suggestion. You check your rifle, fix your bayonet, a cold, sharp glint of steel. Your helmet feels heavy, a meager protection against the storm you're about to face. You grip the wooden stock of your rifle, the smooth, worn surface a small, familiar comfort in a world gone mad. The whistle blows, a shrill, piercing shriek that cuts through the din of the artillery and the pounding of your own blood in your ears. It's the sound of doom, the signal for the charge. You don't think, you can't think. There's only instinct, a surge of adrenaline that propels you forward. You climb out of the trench, scrambling over the sandbags, your boots slipping in the mud. The world explodes into a maelstrom of sound and fury. Machine guns, which you were told would be destroyed by the bombardment, immediately open fire, their metallic chatter a horrifying counterpoint to the screams of men. Bullets rip through the air, spitting up mud, tearing through flesh. You hear the sickening thud of impacts, the gurgling cries of those around you as they fall, cut down in an instant. The battlefield is no longer just the desolate abyss. It's a meat grinder, a relentless hail of lead and steel. You run, or try to, stumbling over shell craters, tripping on tangled barbed wire. Your lungs burn, your legs ache, but you push forward, a tiny cog in a vast, unstoppable, and ultimately self-destructive machine. Your vision narrows, focused only on the ground directly in front of you, the next step, the next obstacle. The smoke and dust are so thick you can barely see. It's a chaotic, suffocating fog, filled with the screams of the wounded, the deafening roar of explosions, and the desperate shouts of officers trying to maintain some semblance of order. You can feel the concussion of shells landing nearby, the ground heaving beneath your feet, sending you sprawling into the mud. You scramble back up, gasping for breath, your face caked with grime, your eyes stinging from the dust and sweat. You see men fall all around you, some collapsing silently, others clutching at their wounds, their blood staining the mud a shocking crimson. You step over them, around them, trying not to look, trying not to acknowledge the humanity of the dying. Each fallen comrade is a chilling reminder of your own fragility, your own imminent death. You taste the dirt, the fear, the blood, a metallic tang that coats your tongue. The noise is unbearable, a cacophony of destruction that deafens your ears and scrambles your thoughts. You try to focus on the objective, on the enemy trenches, but they seem impossibly far away, an unreachable sanctuary. The barbed wire is a cruel, unforgiving trap. Men get entangled, caught in its merciless embrace, struggling desperately as machine gun fire peppers their exposed bodies. You see their pleas, their terrified eyes, but there's nothing you can do. To stop is to die. To help is to die. You have to push on, leaving them to their horrific fate, the memory of their desperate cries searing themselves into your mind. Your uniform is torn, your skin scraped and bleeding, but you don't feel it. The pain is a dull throb beneath the surge of adrenaline. You see the enemy now dimly through the smoke, firing from their trenches, their faces grim, their resolve as strong as your own. There's no glory here, no heroism, only a brutal primal struggle for survival. You raise your rifle, fire wildly more out of instinct than aim. You fix your bayonet, anticipating the moment of contact, the sickening lunge, the desperate struggle. The fear is so intense it's almost a physical pain, a burning sensation that consumes your entire being, but the advance falters. Men are falling too fast. The gaps in the line grow wider. The initial momentum drains away, replaced by despair. You find yourself alone, or with just a few scattered comrades, lost in the maelstrom. The objective, the enemy trench, seems no closer than when you started. You realize with a chilling clarity that this is a futile charge, a mass suicide. The ground is littered with the dead and dying, a carpet of broken bodies, a testament to the devastating power of modern weaponry. You lie in a shell crater, gasping for air, the world spinning around you. The machine gun fire continues its relentless sweep, bullets tearing into the mud nearby, kicking up fountains of dirt. You close your eyes, wishing for it all to end, for the noise to stop, for the terror to cease, but it doesn't. The battle rages on, a relentless, senseless slaughter. You are caught in the maw, a tiny, insignificant life in the grand, brutal scheme of war. The mud beneath you is already growing warm with the blood of your comrades. A grim, final embrace from the desolation of no man's land. You try to move, but your limbs feel heavy, unresponsive, as if the earth itself is pulling you down, claiming you as its own. You stare at the sky, a perpetual canvas of grey and black smoke, wondering if this is the last thing you will ever see, if this is how your story ends, swallowed by the chaos of a charge into oblivion. The screams of the wounded around you merge into a single, agonizing symphony of suffering, and you know with a chilling certainty that you are just another forgotten soldier, soon to join the silent ranks of the unburied. The charge has failed, or perhaps it's just another skirmish, another brief, brutal foray into the desolate expanse. You've been forced back, scrambling into the relative safety of your trench, your heart still pounding, your body shaking. But as the machine gun fire subsides, replaced by the sporadic crack of rifles and the distant rumble of artillery, a new, more agonizing sound pierces the air. The cries of the wounded. They are out there in no man's land, trapped, bleeding, suffering. Their voices are desperate, pathetic, echoing across the craters and barbed wire, a mournful chorus of agony that claws at your conscience. "Water!" someone screams, his voice raw, hoarse. "Help me!" another pleads, his tone tinged with frantic despair. "Mother!" a younger voice whimpers, fading into a choked sob. You press your face against the sandbags, listening, your stomach twisting into knots. You want to help? Every fiber of your being screams to rush out there, to pull them back, to ease their suffering. But you can't. To venture out now in the daylight, or even under the eerie glow of flares, is almost certain death. The enemy snipers are waiting, their rifles poised, ready to pick off any brave fool who dares to show an act of mercy. You are forced to listen, to bear witness to their slow, agonizing deaths, knowing that you are powerless to intervene. This helplessness is a torment far worse than any physical pain. The cries continue, sometimes for hours, sometimes throughout the night, slowly growing weaker, more sporadic, until they eventually fade into an unbearable silence. You hear the pain in their voices, the terror, the desperate longing for relief. You imagine their wounds, a shattered leg, a gaping hole in the stomach, a severed arm. You picture them lying in the mud, exposed to the elements, to the rats, to the relentless cold. Some might be trapped under debris, unable to move, their bodies slowly growing numb with shock and blood loss. Others might have seen their friends fall around them, their own imminent death a terrifying, solitary prospect. Their suffering becomes your suffering, a shared anguish that permeates the trench, a collective burden that weighs heavily on every man's soul. You grip your rifle, your knuckles white, wishing you could turn off your ears, wishing you could erase the sounds from your memory. But the cries are persistent, haunting, a constant reminder of the thin line between your safety and their oblivion. Sometimes, a brief unofficial truce might be called, a moment of shared humanity in the midst of the brutality. A Red Cross flag might be raised, and stretcher bearers from both sides might venture out, cautiously, to collect the wounded. But these moments are rare, often short-lived, and not always honored. More often, the wounded are left to their fate, their lives slowly ebbing away in the desolate void. You watch them, or fragments of them, through your periscope or through a loophole. You see a hand twitch, a head move slightly, a desperate attempt to seek comfort, to find warmth, to cling to life. But then the movement ceases. The hand goes limp. The head falls back. Another life extinguished, another body added to the growing multitude of the forgotten. The sun rises and sets, painting the sky with indifferent colors, as the lives of these men slowly drain away. The cold night air settles on their exposed bodies, accelerating their decline. The rats, always present, always hungry, begin their macabre feast, a horrifying spectacle that makes your stomach clench. You close your eyes, trying to block out the images, the sounds, the sheer horror of it all. But they are burned into your memory, a permanent scar on your conscience. The silence that eventually falls is even more disturbing than the cries. It's a heavy, oppressive silence, filled with the ghosts of the fallen, with the echoes of their final pleas. It's a silence that tells you the suffering is over, that another life has been extinguished, another soul lost to the unforgiving embrace of no man's land. You look out at the grey, broken landscape, knowing that somewhere out there, among the craters and the barbed wire, lie the newly dead, their bodies now joining the countless others, slowly sinking into the mud, becoming part of the desolation. You reflect on the injustice, the sheer waste of it all. These men, barely more than boys, left to die alone in the cold, unforgiving mud, their families unaware of their horrific end, their final moments filled with unimaginable pain and solitude. You pull your greatcoat tighter, trying to ward off the chill, but it's a chill that comes from within, a cold dread that settles deep in your bones. The cries from the void, though silent now, will forever echo in your mind, a haunting reminder of the forgotten soldiers who died alone, their voices lost to the vast, indifferent expanse of no man's land. You try to speak, to share your torment with a comrade, but what words could possibly encapsulate the enormity of this suffering? Your voice catches in your throat, and you simply stare into the desolate abyss, the image of those silent, suffering figures forever etched into your memory. As if the enemy, the shells, the mud, and the rats weren't enough, you quickly learn that nature itself is a formidable and cruel adversary in no man's land. The weather isn't just an inconvenience, it's a weapon, an additional layer of torment that grinds away at your resolve and exacts its own brutal toll. The pervasive dampness is the constant, the inescapable reality. Rain is a frequent visitor, sometimes a gentle drizzle, more often a relentless downpour that turns the trenches into rivers of mud and the dugouts into sodden, miserable holes. The water seeps through everything, chilling you to the bone, making your uniforms heavy and uncomfortable and intensifying the already horrendous conditions. Your feet, constantly wet, become soft and vulnerable to trench foot, a terrifying condition that can lead to gangrene and amputation. You're always squelching, always dripping, always shivering. The sound of rain on the corrugated iron roofs of the dugouts is a monotonous, maddening drumbeat, a constant reminder of the inescapable misery. You watch the water level rise in the trenches, sometimes reaching your knees, bringing with it the floating detritus of war. Discarded cans, splintered wood, and even, horrifyingly, the fragments of human remains churned up from below. Winter, however, brings a new level of hellish suffering. The rain turns to sleet, then to snow. The mud freezes solid, turning the treacherous ground into an icy, unyielding surface that offers no purchase. The cold becomes intense, penetrating your threadbare uniform, seeping into your very marrow. Your fingers and toes grow numb, quickly losing all feeling, threatening frostbite. You huddle together in the dugouts, trying to share what little body heat you have. But the cold is relentless, an invisible enemy that seeks to claim you through exposure. Your breath hangs in the air like ghostly plumes, and the very act of existing becomes a monumental struggle against the elements. Water in your canteen freezes, rations become rock hard, and the slightest touch of bare skin on cold metal can cause it to stick, tearing off flesh. The wind, when it whips across no man's land, carries with it an icy bite that seems to strip away your resolve, leaving you raw and vulnerable. You see men shivering uncontrollably, their faces blue, their lips cracked, their eyes glazed over with exhaustion and the fight against hypothermia. Some succumb silently to the cold, their bodies found rigid in the morning, their faces frozen in a final, agonizing expression. Then there's the sun. In summer, it can be just as merciless. The relentless heat bakes the mud dry, turning it into a dusty, cracked wasteland. The smell of decay from the unburied dead intensifies, permeating the air with a thick, putrid aroma that makes breathing a struggle. Flies swarm, buzzing around your face, landing on your food, a constant, irritating presence that seems to multiply 1,000-fold. The heat in the trenches is stifling, suffocating, the air still and heavy. You sweat constantly, losing vital fluids, leading to dehydration and exhaustion. Your skin burns and cracks under the intense rays, and the dust, churned up by every movement, gets into your eyes, your mouth, your lungs, turning every breath into a gritty, uncomfortable experience. The transition from intense heat to freezing cold, often within a single day, or with the changing seasons, adds to the physical and mental toll. Your body is constantly trying to adjust, constantly under stress, constantly fighting against the extreme conditions. The weather also plays a crucial role in shaping no man's land itself. Heavy rains turn the craters into stagnant ponds, reflecting the grey sky like dead eyes. They become traps hiding deep, treacherous mud that can swallow a man whole. The frozen ground makes digging new trenches or improving existing ones almost impossible, leaving you exposed. Fog and mist, while offering some cover from enemy observation, also add to the eerie, disorienting atmosphere, making patrols even more perilous. You hear the stories of men lost in the fog, wandering too close to enemy lines, or simply disappearing into the vast, featureless expanse. The weather strips away any semblance of comfort, any illusion of control. You are at the mercy of the elements, just another vulnerable creature in a vast, indifferent landscape. You feel the rain dripping down your neck, the cold seeping into your boots, the burning sun on your exposed skin. And you understand that nature, in its brutal neutrality, is as much an enemy as the men in the trenches opposite. It accelerates the decay of the fallen, makes retrieval impossible, and relentlessly grinds down the living, pushing them closer to their breaking point. The ceaseless battle against the elements becomes just another front in the endless war, a constant, miserable, and often deadly struggle that adds its own grim tally to the forgotten soldiers of no man's land. You try to find a dry spot, a moment of respite from the persistent damp, but it's a futile quest. The cold, wet embrace of the trench is a permanent fixture, an extension of your own suffering. The physical wounds of war are evident, shattered limbs, gaping holes, the blood-soaked mud. But you quickly learn that there are other wounds, invisible ones, that are far more insidious, far more terrifying. These are the wounds of the mind, the slow, agonizing erosion of sanity caused by the relentless, dehumanizing reality of the front line. You see it in the eyes of the men around you, and sometimes you catch a glimpse of it in your own reflection, a vacant stare, a twitchy nervousness, a profound, crushing despair. The constant barrage of artillery fire, the deafening explosions, the incessant machine gun chatter, the ever-present threat of death, it grinds away at your nerves, shattering your capacity for normal thought. Your ears ring constantly, your head throbs, and the world outside the trench becomes a blur of violence and noise. Sleep offers little respite, often plagued by nightmares of explosions, of dying comrades, of the horrors you've witnessed. You wake in a cold sweat, your heart pounding, unable to distinguish between the terrifying dream and the equally terrifying reality. The term shell shock becomes commonplace, a grim diagnosis for those whose minds finally break under the strain. You see men trembling uncontrollably, their bodies racked with spasms, unable to hold a mug of tea steady. Some stare blankly into space, their eyes wide and unseeing, their minds retreating into a self-imposed prison of silence. Others burst into uncontrollable fits of weeping or hysterical laughter, their emotions utterly fractured. They might lose their voice, their memory, or their ability to move their limbs, all without a physical wound. It's a terrifying sight, a chilling glimpse into the fragility of the human mind. You watch as a comrade who was laughing and joking just weeks ago descends into this mental abyss, his personality unraveling before your eyes. His transformation is a stark reminder that no one is truly safe, that the war can claim your mind just as easily as it can claim your body. The shame associated with shell shock is often immense. Some officers, unable to comprehend the psychological toll, accuse men of malingering, of cowardice, threatening them with court-martial and even execution. This only exacerbates the suffering, forcing men to suppress their symptoms, to fight a battle against their own minds in silence, fearing the judgment of their superiors and their comrades. Despair is a constant companion, a heavy, suffocating blanket that settles over the trenches. It's the despair of knowing that tomorrow will bring the same mud, the same cold, the same fear, the same death. It's the despair of seemingly endless conflict with no end in sight, no clear victory on the horizon. It's the despair of seeing your friends fall, one by one, their lives extinguished with brutal indifference. You write letters home, trying to put a brave face on it, but the words feel hollow, inadequate. How can you describe this hell to those who live in comfort? How can you convey the utter hopelessness that permeates every waking moment? You yearn for a moment of peace, a moment of quiet, a moment where you don't have to be constantly vigilant, constantly afraid. But those moments are rare, fleeting, quickly swallowed by the omnipresent dread. Alcohol becomes a temporary escape, a numbing agent for the pain. Men drink cheap rum, anything to dull the edges of their reality, to find a few hours of oblivion. But the awakening is always harsher, the despair even deeper. Sometimes a sudden flare will illuminate the scene, casting the unburied dead in an eerie, ghostly light. Their shadows stretch long and distorted, turning them into monstrous figures, a silent army of the fallen. For a brief moment, their forms are sharply defined, their gruesome details thrown into stark relief before the darkness swallows them once more. These are the moments that truly haunt you, the images that burn themselves into your mind, emerging later in nightmares, in the quiet moments of sleep that offer no true rest. You understand with a chilling clarity that these men were once like you. They had hopes, dreams, families, futures. Now they are just bodies, left to rot in this desolate abyss, their names unremembered, their stories untold. Their very presence out there is a constant psychological burden, a visible representation of what happens when the machines of war consume everything. They are a constant memento mori, a stark warning of your own eventual fate. If you are not careful, if you are not lucky, if the war decides it's your turn. Their silence is deafening, a profound testament to the ultimate horror of this conflict. You clench your jaw, trying to block out the images, the smells, the undeniable truth of their existence. But they are there, always there, an army of the forgotten, forever lying beneath the desolation of no man's land. You try to imagine their last moments, the sounds, the pain, the despair, and a cold shudder runs through you, a premonition of your own possible end. The wind whispers through the tattered remnants of their uniforms, a mournful sigh that seems to carry their unheard pleas. The order comes, retrieve a fallen comrade. Your stomach churns. You know what this means. It means venturing into no man's land, not for offensive action, but for a solemn, dangerous act of remembrance. It's a mission fraught with peril, a desperate attempt to reclaim a shred of humanity in a place where it has long been abandoned. The man who fell, perhaps during a daytime skirmish or a sudden burst of machine gun fire, now lies out there, just beyond the wire. You might have known him, shared a cigarette, a joke, a fear. Now he is just a distant, unmoving shape, a target for snipers and a feast for rats. You gather your gear, your face grim. A stretcher, if you're lucky, or just a ground sheet. You move with a small party, perhaps 4 men, under the cover of darkness, creeping out of the trench, your movements even more cautious than a regular patrol. This isn't about gaining ground. It's about honor, about defying the war's dehumanizing power, about bringing one of your own back home, even if home is just a shallow grave behind the lines. The journey across no man's land is a torturous one. The dead are everywhere, and as you navigate the shell craters and barbed wire, you constantly brush past the remains of others. You try not to think about it, try to focus solely on the task at hand. The cold, damp earth presses against your face. The pervasive smell of decay is overwhelming. Every step is a calculated risk. The enemy might hear you, might see you. A flare could go up, illuminating your desperate act of mercy, turning you into easy targets. You move in silence, a macabre ballet of shadows. your heart's pounding in your chests, the adrenaline making your senses hyper-alert. The faint outline of your comrade's body eventually comes into view, lying awkwardly, perhaps entangled in the wire. As you approach, the true horror reveals itself. The body is often already ravaged. Rats might have been at it, or the elements have taken their toll. His face, if visible, might be distorted by death, by the impact of a shell fragment, or by the slow, grotesque process of decomposition. You might recognize a feature, a button, a patch, a personal belonging, and a wave of grief and revulsion washes over you. This was a man, a friend. Now he is this. The retrieval itself is a grim, heavy task. The body is often stiff, unwieldy, or conversely disturbingly soft and pliable. If he's caught in the wire, freeing him can be a painstaking, dangerous process. Each tug on the sharp barbs a reminder of the cruel trap that claimed him. The smell is intense, sickeningly sweet, clinging to your uniform, invading your nostrils. You try to be gentle, to show respect, but the urgency of the situation, the ever-present threat of enemy fire, forces you to be rougher than you wish. You wrestle with the weight, the stiffness, the entanglement. His limbs may be broken, his clothes torn, his body shattered. You might find his pocket watch, a letter from home, a small token of a life he once lived, a life now irrevocably lost. You try to hold on to these remnants of his humanity, to treat them with reverence, but the brutal reality of the moment pushes them to the periphery of your awareness. Carrying him back is an agonizing journey. The stretcher-bearers stumble in the mud, the body swaying precariously. The weight is immense, not just physically but emotionally. You are carrying not just a corpse, but the shattered dreams, the unspoken words, the future that was stolen from this man. Each step is a struggle, a fight against the terrain, against exhaustion, against the gnawing fear that you might share his fate at any moment. You are slow, vulnerable, a clear target. You listen intently for any sound from the enemy lines, any hint of discovery. The relief when you finally reach the relative safety of your own trench is immense, a visceral outpouring of adrenaline and exhaustion. You deposit the body, often in a temporary dugout or a designated burial spot behind the lines. You are covered in mud, in the smell of decay, in the grim reality of what you have done. You wash your hands, but the stench seems to linger, clinging to your skin, to your clothes, to your very soul. You look at the mud on your uniform, imagining the blood, the soil, the essence of the fallen comrade that has now transferred to you. But often, retrieval is impossible. The shelling is too heavy, the enemy fire too intense, or the body is simply too far out, too close to the enemy lines, too entangled in the wire, or too dismembered to gather. You are forced to leave him there, to abandon him to the elements, to the rats, to the slow, inevitable process of becoming one with the mud of no man's land. This is the true futility, the heartbreak. To know that a comrade, a friend, lies out there, exposed, unmourned, and to be powerless to do anything about it. This helplessness is a cruel torment, a constant wound in your conscience. You stand on the fire step, looking out at the distant, unmoving shape that was once a man, a life, and you feel the immense crushing weight of the war, the complete and utter disregard it has for human life, for human dignity. You remember his laugh, his face, the stories he told, and you know that all of that is now just a memory, slowly fading into the desolate abyss. The wind howls through the barbed wire, carrying with it a mournful lament for all the forgotten soldiers, the ones who could not be brought home, the ones whose final resting place remains the desolate, unyielding embrace of no man's land. You try to swallow, but your throat feels tight, choked with unspoken grief. The image of his vacant eyes staring sightlessly at the indifferent sky is burned into your memory, a permanent scar on your soul. The order rings out, sharp and decisive. Over the top! It's a command that sends a shiver of ice through your veins, a primal terror that grips your stomach and makes your heart hammer against your ribs like a trapped bird. You've heard the stories, seen the faces of those who've come back from such charges, their eyes empty, their spirits broken. Now it's your turn. The previous hours have been a blur of frantic activity, a heavy artillery bombardment meant to soften up the enemy lines, the air thick with the acrid smell of cordite, the ground shaking beneath your feet. Your officer, his face pale but determined, has gone over the plan countless times, though you know deep down that any plan in this chaos is merely a suggestion. You check your rifle, fix your bayonet, a cold, sharp glint of steel. Your helmet feels heavy, a meager protection against the storm you're about to face. You grip the wooden stock of your rifle, the smooth, worn surface a small, familiar comfort in a world gone mad. The whistle blows, a shrill, piercing shriek that cuts through the din of the artillery and the pounding of your own blood in your ears. It's the sound of doom, the signal for the charge. You don't think, you can't think. There's only instinct, a surge of adrenaline that propels you forward. You climb out of the trench, scrambling over the sandbags, your boots slipping in the mud. The world explodes into a maelstrom of sound and fury. Machine guns, which you were told would be destroyed by the bombardment, immediately open fire, their metallic chatter a horrifying counterpoint to the screams of men. Bullets rip through the air, spitting up mud, tearing through flesh. You hear the sickening thud of impacts, the gurgling cries of those around you as they fall, cut down in an instant. The battlefield is no longer just the desolate abyss. It's a meat grinder, a relentless hail of lead and steel. You run, or try to, stumbling over shell craters, tripping on tangled barbed wire. Your lungs burn, your legs ache, but you push forward, a tiny cog in a vast, unstoppable, and ultimately self-destructive machine. Your vision narrows, focused only on the ground directly in front of you, the next step, the next obstacle. The loss of hope is a slow, insidious poison. You begin to question everything. The purpose of the war, the sacrifices, the very meaning of life. The grand ideals you started with, the patriotic fervor that propelled you to enlist, slowly erode, replaced by a cynical bitterness, a profound sense of disillusionment. You look at the desolate landscape of no man's land, at the unburied dead, at the faces of your comrades, and you see only suffering, only waste. The future seems bleak, uncertain, and even if you survive, you wonder if you will ever truly be the same person again. The invisible wounds of shell shock and despair are often deeper, more lasting than any physical injury. They scar the soul, leaving an indelible mark that will linger long after the guns fall silent. You learn to put on a brave face to hide your own terror, to keep going one day at a time. But inside you are slowly disintegrating, a piece of your humanity chipping away with every shell, every death, every moment of fear. You try to remember who you were before this war, before the mud and the blood and the endless terror. But that person seems like a stranger now, a ghost from another lifetime. The constant ringing in your ears is a physical manifestation of the invisible wounds, a permanent reminder of the violence that has reshaped your inner world. You clench your jaw, trying to hold back the tremor that threatens to overcome you, trying to maintain the facade of resilience in a world that is actively trying to break you. Amidst the unrelenting horror, the mud, the death, and the despair, you find an unexpected yet vital source of solace, the bonds of brotherhood. It's a connection forged in the crucible of shared suffering, a silent, powerful understanding that transcends words. These men, your comrades, become your family, your lifeline, the only people in the world who truly understand the hell you're enduring. You eat together, sleep together, fight together, and often you die together. You share everything, meager rations, cigarettes, letters from home, and the deepest, most primal fears that you dare not voice to anyone else. It's a unique camaraderie, born of necessity and cemented by the constant proximity of death. You look at the man next to you, his face caked with mud, his eyes haunted, and you see a reflection of yourself, a shared humanity that even the war cannot completely extinguish. In the cramped, claustrophobic dugouts amidst the stench and the gloom. Moments of surprising warmth and levity emerge. Someone might pull out a harmonica, its mournful melody a brief, poignant escape from the harsh reality. Stories are told, jokes are shared, often dark and cynical, but they are a way to release the tension, to laugh in the face of death. You swap tales of home, of loved ones, of the lives you led before this madness, clinging to those memories as a tether to the world you left behind. A game of cards, played by the flickering light of a candle, becomes a precious ritual, a momentary distraction from the chaos outside. These aren't grand gestures. They are small, intimate moments of connection, quiet acts of defiance against the dehumanizing forces of war. You offer a sip of your tea, a drag of your cigarette, a helping hand with a stuck boot. These small kindnesses become monumental acts of compassion, reinforcing the fragile threads that bind you together. You rely on each other implicitly. In a charge, you cover your comrade's back, trusting him to cover yours. In the trenches, you share sentry duty, watching out for one another, knowing that a moment's lapse could mean death. You dress each other's wounds, comfort each other in moments of terror, and mourn each other when one falls. There's an unspoken code, a fierce loyalty that dictates that no man is left behind, even in the most perilous circumstances. When a shell lands too close, you instinctively reach for the man next to you, a desperate need for human contact, a shared affirmation of survival. When the going gets tough, when despair threatens to overwhelm you, it's the encouragement of your comrades, their shared endurance, that keeps you going, that pulls you back from the brink. You develop an intuitive understanding, a way of communicating without words, simply through glances, through shared silences, through the subtle shifts in body language. You know when a man is at his breaking point, when he needs a quiet word, a pat on the shoulder, a moment of shared stoicism. This brotherhood is your shield against the overwhelming forces of destruction. It's the reason you continue to fight, continue to endure. You're not just fighting for a flag or a country or some abstract ideal anymore. You're fighting for the man next to you. You're fighting to protect him, to survive with him, to share another joke, another cigarette, another sunrise. The thought of letting your comrades down is often more terrifying than the thought of death itself. When a man falls, the grief is palpable, a heavy weight that settles over the group. You don't always cry, for tears are a luxury often denied in this environment, but the loss is deeply felt, a piece of your shared humanity torn away. His absence creates a void, a chilling reminder of the fragility of your own existence. You carry his memory, his stories, his last words, a sacred trust that binds you to him even in death. This bond of brotherhood is the enduring light in the suffocating darkness of no man's land, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. You find yourself leaning on the man beside you, not just for physical support, but for emotional fortitude, for the silent strength that flows between you, an invisible current of shared humanity. The knowing glance, the quick nod, the shared sigh. These are the communications that truly matter. Forging a bond deeper than any family, any friendship you've ever known. It's a strange, almost surreal phenomenon that sometimes occurs on the front lines, a moment of profound, unspoken humanity that cuts through the relentless brutality of war. You find yourself staring across no man's land, not with hatred, but with a weary sense of recognition. The enemy, just like you, is enduring the same mud, the same cold, the same fear, the same constant threat of death. And sometimes, in rare, fleeting moments, this shared suffering leads to an unofficial, fragile truce, a temporary cessation of hostilities. It might start subtly. Perhaps a shared respect for stretcher-bearers, allowing them to retrieve the wounded without firing, or a quiet understanding that if no one shoots, no one gets shot. The Christmas truces are the most famous, of course, where men from opposing trenches emerge from their holes to shake hands, exchange cigarettes, even play football in the desolate expanse. You hear the stories, almost mythical in their beauty and fragility, a poignant contrast to the everyday savagery. But beyond the grand gestures, there are countless smaller, unwritten truces. Perhaps a soldier needs to repair some damaged wire in daylight, and an unspoken agreement passes between the lines, a brief suspension of hostilities to allow him to do his task unmolested. You might see a German soldier doing the same, and your finger hesitates on the trigger, a fleeting moment of empathy overriding the ingrained instinct to kill. He's just like you, trying to survive, trying to do his duty. The understanding is often born of simple necessity. Both sides need time to repair their trenches, to bury their dead, to retrieve the wounded. To shoot at a man engaged in such tasks feels like an unnecessary provocation, a violation of an unwritten rule that says, "Let us deal with our dead, and we will let you deal with yours." These truces are never official, never sanctioned by the high command. They are organic, fragile moments of peace that blossom spontaneously from the shared misery of the men on the ground. A single shot can break the spell, plunging everyone back into the brutal reality of war. But for a precious few moments, a different world exists. You might hear the enemy singing a German hymn, a French folk song, and sometimes, from your own trench, a comrade might respond, joining in with a familiar tune from home. It's a strange, ethereal concert across the desolation, a brief communion of shared culture, shared humanity. You might see smoke rising from their lines, the familiar smell of wood smoke, and you realize they are trying to stay warm just like you. You might even exchange cigarettes, tossing a packet over no man's land during a brief lull, a gesture of unexpected camaraderie. These are the moments when the enemy is no longer an abstract monster, but a man just like you with fears, hopes, and the same desperate desire to survive. The shared suffering creates an odd bond, a sense of mutual respect for the sheer endurance of the other side. You are both caught in the same hell, both victims of a larger, unseen force. The hatred that propels the war feels distant in these moments, replaced by a quiet, melancholic understanding. These unspoken truces are a testament to the enduring capacity for human connection, even in the most dehumanizing circumstances. They are acts of defiance against the very nature of war, small victories for empathy over animosity. You learn that the men in the opposite trenches are not inherently evil. They are simply soldiers, like you, fighting for their country, doing what they must to survive. The brief fragile peace is a bittersweet experience. It offers a glimpse of a different world, a world without endless slaughter, without the constant threat of death. But it also makes the return to hostility even harder, the subsequent acts of violence feeling even more senseless, more tragic. You return to your post, your hand on your rifle, the brief warmth of shared humanity fading, replaced by the cold logic of war. But a seed of something remains, a quiet understanding that even in the darkest corners of human conflict, a flicker of light, a whisper of shared grace can still be found. The memory of a shared smile and nod across the desolate waste lingers, a poignant reminder of the humanity that war tries so desperately to extinguish. You find yourself looking at the enemy lines with a different gaze, a mixture of wariness and an almost imperceptible recognition, knowing that the men on the other side are enduring their own version of hell. Just as you are, the war raged for years, and with each passing day, week, month, the landscape of no man's land continued its grotesque transformation. For the fallen, the process of decay and disappearance was relentless, a slow erasure orchestrated by nature and the ceaseless machinery of conflict. You witness this transformation firsthand, the gradual assimilation of human remains into the very fabric of the earth. Bodies that were once relatively intact slowly yield to the elements. Rain washes away flesh, wind scatters bone fragments, and the sun bakes and dries, turning once vibrant forms into mummified husks or, more commonly, into indistinguishable parts. The mud, that ever-present malevolent force slowly consumes them, pulling them down into its viscous embrace, burying them piece by piece until they are mere outlines, indistinct shapes beneath the churned surface. You see a boot sticking out of the mud one day, and a week later it's gone, swallowed by the insatiable earth. The constant shelling is perhaps the most brutal agent of this erasure. Each explosion churns up the ground, unburying and reburying the dead, scattering their remains even further. A man might fall in one crater, and his head might be blown into another, his limbs dispersed over a wide area, making identification, or even recognition, utterly impossible. The ground is a macabre mosaic of human fragments, mixed with shrapnel, mud, and the detritus of war. You step over fragments of bone without realizing it, for they have become so integrated with the earth that they are indistinguishable from the stones and debris. The sheer force of the explosions pulverizes bodies, reducing them to dust and unidentifiable organic matter, forever dispersing their essence into the soil. It's a terrifying thought that your own body, if you fall, might not even be left intact enough for anyone to recognize you, to mourn you. You could become just another anonymous component of the earth, another forgotten statistic. Animals, too, play their part in this grim process. The rats, emboldened and growing to monstrous sizes, are constant scavengers, feeding on the soft tissue, leaving only stripped bones. Birds of prey, if any dared to venture into the war-torn skies, would pick at the exposed flesh. But more than anything, it is the bacteria, the insects, the slow, relentless work of decomposition that transforms these men. From individuals, they become anonymous bundles of decaying matter, then skeletal forms, and finally, mere mineral traces indistinguishable from the soil itself. The stench, once overwhelming, gradually lessens, becoming a more subtle, yet still pervasive, aroma of damp earth and deep decay. It's a smell that embeds itself into the very landscape, a permanent reminder of the charnel house that no man's land has become. The passage of time adds its own cruel layer to this disappearance. Memories of individual faces fade, names are forgotten. The sheer scale of the death makes it impossible to mourn every single loss, to remember every single man. Those who died early in the war might be completely gone by the later years, their bodies having dissolved back into the earth, leaving no trace. Their graves are unmarked, their resting places unknown, their stories lost to the swirling chaos of conflict. The landscape becomes their tombstone, the mud their shroud, the wind their eulogy. You look out across the desolate expanse and you understand that what you are seeing is not just a battlefield, but a vast, sprawling cemetery, millions strong, most of them unmarked and unknown. You reflect on the tragic irony. These men gave their lives for their country, for freedom, for a cause, and in return, they received only anonymity, their very existence erased by the brutal forces of war and nature. The slow erasure is not just physical, it's also historical, a gradual fading from collective memory, turning vibrant lives into mere statistics, into the forgotten soldiers buried beneath the vast, indifferent expanse of no man's land. You try to conjure a face for them, a name, a story, but their numbers are too great. Their individual tragedies swallowed by the collective horror. The wind whispers through the sparse, skeletal remnants of trees, carrying with it the ghostly echoes of lives that once were, now absorbed into the eternal silence of the earth. The guns eventually fall silent. The war ends. The world breathes a collective sigh of relief, then turns its attention to rebuilding, to forgetting. But the earth, it never forgets. For decades, even a century later, the battlefields of the Western Front remain scarred, silent witnesses to the cataclysm that unfolded there. As farmers return to their land, attempting to reclaim fields that were once fertile, they encounter the chilling legacy of no man's land. Ploughing season becomes a macabre archaeological dig. Every turn of the soil brings forth new discoveries, not just rusty shrapnel, unexploded shells and coils of barbed wire, but also human remains, bones, skulls, fragments of uniform. The earth, in its slow, relentless churn, constantly resurfaces the forgotten soldiers, unwilling to let their sacrifice remain buried in anonymity. You can imagine the scene. A farmer, perhaps a man who fought in the war himself, his hands gnarled from years of toil, guiding his plough through the rich, dark soil. The blade catches on something hard. He stops, curious, perhaps irritated by the obstruction. He digs it out, and there, amidst the clods of earth, lies a rusted helmet or a hobnailed boot, or, with a jolt of revulsion and sorrow, a human skull, its empty eye socket staring up at the indifferent sky. It's a jarring encounter, a sudden, visceral connection to the past, a stark reminder of the lives that ended here, swallowed by the mud and forgotten by the world. These discoveries are not isolated incidents. They are a constant, unending process. Every year, more are found. Fields that have been ploughed for decades continue to yield their grim harvest of war dead, a testament to the sheer scale of the casualties and the chaotic nature of their burials, or lack thereof. The bones are often discoloured by the earth, stained by minerals but undeniably human. They are mixed with the detritus of war, buttons, buckles, identity tags, if they haven't corroded or been lost. Sometimes a wallet with fragile, water-damaged photographs or a diary with faded ink offers a tantalizing glimpse into the life of the man whose remains have just been unearthed. These personal effects are poignant, heartbreaking reminders that this was not just a statistic, but a son, a brother, a husband, a friend. They had names, stories, futures that were abruptly, brutally cut short. The sight of these relics retrieved from the earth often brings a flood of emotion, a wave of grief for a life lost so long ago, a life that finally gets a moment of recognition. You think of the farmer holding a shattered photograph, trying to imagine the young man whose face stares back at him, knowing that he, the farmer, is now the only one left to bear witness. For some, these discoveries are a source of profound sadness and respect. For others, particularly the local villagers who have lived with this legacy for generations, it's a grim reality of life, a constant reminder of the war that refuses to die. They call it the iron harvest, the yearly crop of metal and bones that the earth yields. Entire families have grown up knowing that their fields are also graveyards, that every patch of soil holds the silent stories of hundreds of thousands of forgotten soldiers. The experience of unearthing a man who died a century ago, seeing the exact moment he fell, sometimes still clutching his rifle or caught in the barbed wire, is a powerful, humbling experience. It's a direct link to the past, a tangible connection to the men who sacrificed everything. The earth, in its slow, unyielding way, continues to tell their stories, forcing us to remember, to bear witness, to acknowledge the forgotten soldiers buried beneath no man's land. You imagine the chill of the morning air, the sound of the plough turning the earth, and the sudden, silent appearance of a bleached bone, a stark reminder that the past is never truly buried. The silence of the fields, punctuated only by the cries of birds, is a deceptive mask for the millions of untold stories that lie just beneath the surface, waiting for their moment of rediscovery. Even today, the earth of the Western Front continues to surrender its grim secrets. Modern archaeology, combined with meticulous historical research and forensic science, is slowly, painstakingly giving names back to the forgotten. You watch documentaries, read articles, see the news reports, and are struck by the incredible dedication of the teams who work tirelessly to uncover, identify, and finally lay to rest the soldiers who fell a century ago. These are not just casual discoveries by farmers anymore. These are systematic excavations, meticulously planned operations to reclaim the lost. When a new road is built or a new construction project begins, The ground is first carefully scanned, revealing the telltale signs of battle, concentrations of metal, the outlines of collapsed trenches, the disturbed earth that indicates mass graves or individual casualties. The process of identification is a remarkable fusion of old and new. Dig teams meticulously sift through the mud, searching for every fragment, a uniform button, a regimental badge, a coin, a watch, a pencil, a piece of paper, all potential clues. Every bone is carefully catalogued, every artifact painstakingly cleaned and preserved. The human remains themselves are treated with immense respect. Forensic anthropologists analyze the bones, determining age, stature, any signs of injury or disease. Dental records, when available, can be matched. DNA analysis, perhaps the most powerful tool, can link a century-old bone to a living descendant, solving a mystery that has haunted a family for generations. You imagine the emotion of a descendant, perhaps a great-grandson, receiving the call, learning that the uncle they only knew as a name on a memorial has finally been found. His story now complete. The excavation sites themselves are chillingly evocative. You see the ghostly outlines of trenches perfectly preserved in the mud, sometimes with duckboards still in place, even the boots of men who died where they stood. They find the remains of men still wearing their helmets, their gas masks, their equipment, caught in the exact moment of their death. A hand still clutching a rifle, a body entangled in barbed wire, a group of men found huddled together in a dugout, killed by a direct hit. These are not just historical facts. They are visceral, heart-wrenching scenes that speak volumes about the terror and brutality of their final moments. Each discovery is a direct link to the past, a tangible connection to the individual human tragedy behind the vast statistics of the Great War. You feel a profound sense of awe and sorrow as you see these images, these glimpses into a frozen moment of history. These efforts are not just about finding bones, they are about remembrance, about giving dignity back to those who were denied it in death. Once identified, these soldiers are given proper military burials, often with full honors, their names finally inscribed on headstones, their families finally able to mourn at a known grave. It's a powerful act of closure, not just for the families, but for the collective memory. It's a recognition that these were not just numbers, not just forgotten names on a memorial, but real people, with lives and stories that deserve to be remembered. You understand that this ongoing work is vital. It ensures that the sacrifices of these forgotten soldiers are not in vain, that their stories are not lost to the relentless march of time. It reminds us of the true cost of war, the profound human toll that continues to emerge from the earth, long after the last shot was fired. This modern reckoning is a poignant testament to our enduring need to understand our past, to honor our dead, and to ensure that the forgotten soldiers buried beneath no man's land are finally remembered. You feel a sense of profound respect for the dedication, the patience, and the sheer humanity of those who undertake this sacred task, giving voice back to the silent echoes of the past. The meticulous cleaning of a rusted dog tag, the careful matching of a dental record, the quiet dignity of a reburial, these are acts of profound grace in the shadow of historical horror. Segment 18, a debt undiminished. Their sacrifice. Your comfort as we bring this journey to a close tonight. As you lie in your comfortable bed, perhaps with a soft blanket pulled up to your chin, consider the stark contrast between your present reality and the world we've just explored. You are warm, safe, well-fed, free from the pervasive stench of decay, the constant threat of exploding shells, the gnawing hunger of lice and rats. You have a future, a tomorrow that is not dictated by the brutal indifference of a bullet or a shell. This comfort, this peace, this very ability to dream and plan is in no small part built upon the immense, unimaginable sacrifices of the forgotten soldiers buried beneath no man's land. Their suffering, their terror, their lonely deaths in the mud and the wire, laid the foundation for the world you inhabit. They endured the unimaginable so that you might know peace. You have walked with them tonight, in spirit through the mud and the blood, heard the symphony of destruction, felt the grip of despair, and witnessed the fragile glimmer of human connection. You have seen the faces of the unburied, the slow erasure of their existence, and the quiet, persistent work of those who still seek to bring them home a century later. Their stories are not just historical footnotes. They are a vital, visceral part of our collective human narrative. We owe them more than just a passing thought. We owe them our remembrance, our gratitude, and a profound commitment to understanding the true cost of conflict. Their sacrifice, undiminished by time, is a powerful lesson in the fragility of peace and the devastating consequences of war. So, as you drift off to sleep, let the silence of your room be a testament to the peace they fought for. Let the warmth of your bed remind you of the cold they endured. Let your comfort be a silent acknowledgement of their unbearable suffering. Remember the mud, the cold, the hunger, the fear. Remember the broken bodies, the lost dreams, the nameless graves. Remember the bonds of brotherhood forged in hell, and the flicker of shared humanity that sometimes shone through the darkest moments. These forgotten soldiers, swallowed by the earth of no man's land, are not just relics of the past. They are eternal guardians of a warning, a powerful reminder that peace is precious, hard-won, and never to be taken for granted. Their silence is a profound echo, reaching across the generations, urging us to learn, to reflect, and to ensure that such a waste of life never happens again. You are not just closing your eyes. You are bearing witness to a legacy of immense suffering and ultimate sacrifice. Their debt, the one you benefit from every single day, is immense, and it's a debt that calls for continuous remembrance. Let their forgotten voices find a home in your memory tonight, and let their silent suffering resonate with the profound value of the peace you now possess. The gentle hum of your modern life is a direct continuation of the silence they fought for, a peace bought with their unreturnable sacrifice.